Most men believe that loyalty is something a woman gives once she feels loved. That if she commits, if she says the words, if she looks you in the eyes and promises, then loyalty becomes fixed, moral, permanent.
But that belief collapses the moment you learn how the body betrays the truth before the mouth does. Because long before a woman leaves, cheats, distances herself, or emotionally detaches, the shift already happened inside her nervous system. Her voice loses weight. Her posture subtly reorients away from you. Her breathing becomes shallower when you speak. Her gaze no longer rests on you. It scans past you. The rhythm between you breaks, even if the words remain affectionate. Men sense this rupture, but misinterpret it. They talk more, explain more, justify more, apologize for things they don't understand. And with every attempt to fix the connection, they accelerate the collapse they're trying to prevent. What you are about to hear is not a theory about relationships. It is the exposure of a silent psychological mechanism, a law that operates beneath intention, beneath morality, beneath promises. A mechanism so uncomfortable that an entire institution distanced itself from its implications. And by the end of this analysis, you will understand why female loyalty is not something you earn through goodness, but something you activate through structure. Before we go further, answer this honestly in the comments. Have you ever felt a woman emotionally pull away even while she was still saying everything was fine? Not hypothetically, felt it in your body before you could explain it. The invisible decline. There is a specific internal transformation that happens to a man when he believes loyalty is guaranteed. He becomes reactive instead of grounded. He adjusts instead of leading. He waits for signals instead of setting direction. At first it looks like care, then it becomes caution, then it becomes self-surveillance. He monitors his tone, he calculates his words, he softens his edges, he explains his intentions before they're questioned. And here is the brutal truth most men never hear. The moment your internal axis begins to revolve around her perception of you, the structure that once created attraction begins to erode, not because she is cruel, not because she is manipulative, but because the female psyche is exquisitely sensitive to shifts in internal leadership. Women do not track words, they track direction. They feel when a man's center moves from himself to them. And when that happens, something inside her begins to test, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. She interrupts more. She delays replies. She questions decisions she once trusted. She creates subtle friction. This is not sabotage. It is calibration. The feminine psyche constantly scans for safety, stability, and orientation. And safety does not mean kindness. Safety means a man whose internal world does not collapse under pressure. The study that disappeared, the research often referenced and quietly withdrawn from academic circulation, did not claim that women are immoral, disloyal, or deceptive. It claimed something far more dangerous. It suggested that female loyalty is not a moral constant, but a dynamic response to perceived psychological security, not as comfort, but as structure. The study observed behavioral shifts in women paired with men who lost emotional coherence under stress, men who became inconsistent, men who sought validation, men whose identity narrowed into the relationship itself. The results were consistent across demographics. When a woman perceived a decline in a man's internal stability, even without external conflict, her nervous system entered evaluation mode, and evaluation always precedes withdrawal. This is why loyalty fractures before betrayal. This is why distance appears before departure. This is why confusion hits the man first, not the woman, because her body already knows what her mind has not yet articulated. The body betrays first. Most men think betrayal begins with a decision. It doesn't. It begins with a sensation, a subtle loss of tension, a loss of polarity, a loss of gravitational pull. Her body stops leaning in, her voice loses warmth, her laughter becomes polite instead of spontaneous, and the man, sensing the shift, commits the fatal error. He tries to restore connection by explaining himself. Explanation is submission disguised as clarity. The more he explains, the more he signals uncertainty. The more he seeks reassurance, the more he confirms instability. And instability is the only real enemy of female loyalty. Jordan Peterson often alludes to this without framing it romantically. The feminine evaluates order constantly, not because it enjoys chaos, but because chaos is where survival threats emerge. Evolutionary psychology supports this relentlessly. Female attraction and loyalty mechanisms evolved not to reward intention, but to detect reliability under pressure. Studies in affective neuroscience show that women subconsciously track micro-expressions, vocal cadence, and emotional regulation far more accurately than men believe. She doesn't need evidence, she needs coherence. When coherence collapses, loyalty begins to loosen, not as a choice but as a biological response. The first cruel truth. Female loyalty is conditional, not in a moral sense but in a neurological one. It does not anchor to promises. It anchors to perception of stability. A man can have history, affection, investment, and still lose loyalty if he loses direction. Not direction in the relationship, direction in himself, when his purpose dissolves, when his emotional boundaries soften, when his identity becomes negotiable. She feels it immediately, and once the perception shifts, loyalty does not break violently. It leaks. The man who tries too hard. There is a phase most men pass through without recognizing it. They become good. They listen more. They accommodate more. They reduce friction. And slowly, unknowingly, they remove all resistance from the dynamic. But desire and loyalty do not grow in comfort. They grow in tension, held with control. When tension disappears, the feminine psyche becomes restless, not because she wants chaos, but because stillness without direction feels unsafe. This is where many men lose women they did everything right for, because they confused kindness with leadership and availability with presence. The internal axis. The men who retain loyalty do not demand it. They emanate something that makes loyalty unnecessary to negotiate. They have an internal axis. Their emotional center does not move with her moods. Their direction does not bend with her uncertainty. Their presence remains constant whether she is warm or distant. They do not chase the cycle. They remain anchored while the environment fluctuates. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional gravity. The transformation does not happen when a man becomes dominant. It happens when he becomes unmovable internally, when his nervous system no longer reacts to every emotional variation, when silence does not scare him, when distance does not provoke pursuit, when uncertainty does not trigger collapse. At that point, something profound shifts. She stops testing, she stops scanning, she stops evaluating, because the environment stabilizes, and loyalty follows stability the way shadow follows form. The study was never truly about women. It was about men who unknowingly dismantle the very structure that once made them irreplaceable. And in the next block, you will see the most uncomfortable finding of all, the one that explains why admiration, not love, is the real anchor of female loyalty. Because once admiration disappears, loyalty does not hesitate. It vanishes. There is a point in every man's life where confusion turns into bitterness. He did everything right. He was present. He was loyal. He invested time, energy, protection, patience, and yet loyalty dissolved anyway. This is where most men create the wrong enemy. They blame women, they blame culture, they blame modern dating, they blame morality. But the truth that few men are emotionally prepared to face is far more unsettling. Female loyalty does not collapse because a man lacks goodness. It collapses when he loses gravity, and gravity has nothing to do with how much you give. The most cruel finding of all. The most disturbing conclusion extracted from the suppressed research was not about infidelity. It was about admiration decay. The study observed that loyalty rarely breaks at the moment a woman stops loving a man. It breaks at the moment she stops looking up to him internally. This is the point where fantasy dies. Because men are taught that love sustains loyalty. Women are wired to sustain loyalty through admiration, and admiration is not emotional comfort. Admiration is orientation. It is the sensation that the man beside her operates from a depth she cannot fully predict, control, or absorb. When that sensation disappears, the bond loses tension. And without tension, loyalty cannot breathe. Why nice men are abandoned. One of the most misinterpreted patterns in male-female dynamics is this: Why do women remain fiercely loyal to some men who are emotionally distant, intense, and firm, while leaving men who are attentive, correct, and accommodating? The answer is not pathology, it is polarity. A man who adapts himself to her emotional climate becomes inside her psychological field. A man who remains centered regardless of her emotional shifts becomes outside it. And the feminine does not bond deeply to what it can fully contain, it bonds to what it cannot fully domesticate. This is why over-availability kills loyalty faster than conflict, because conflict still preserves polarity, over-adjustment erases it. Admiration as a biological trigger. From a neuropsychological perspective, admiration activates reward pathways associated with long-term bonding, not oxytocin alone, but dopamine paired with emotional safety. This combination is rare. Safety without admiration creates boredom. Admiration without safety creates anxiety. Loyalty requires both. The man who loses emotional control under pressure removes safety. The man who loses direction removes admiration. Either collapse destabilizes the bond. Both together guarantee erosion. The moment loyalty shifts, there is a silent internal moment in the female psyche where loyalty changes state. It is not conscious. It does not come with a decision. It arrives as a feeling of lightness. The relationship feels less dense, less anchored, less inevitable. She does not think, "I will betray him." She thinks, "Something here no longer holds me." And once that sensation exists, loyalty becomes optional, not immoral. Optional. The man who cannot be replaced. The study pointed toward a pattern that was too politically uncomfortable to circulate openly. Women remain loyal not to men who are irreplaceable socially, but to men who are emotionally irreplaceable. And emotional irreplaceability is built from three invisible elements: depth she cannot fully access, consistency she can rely on, autonomy that does not depend on her validation. When these coexist, loyalty becomes instinctive, because the nervous system does not want to abandon what stabilizes it. Why Harvard backed away? The problem was never the data, it was the implication. If loyalty is not moral, not contractual, not guaranteed by commitment, then modern narratives collapse. The research suggested that loyalty is responsive, not promised, that it follows internal perception, not verbal agreement, and that the man's internal structure is the primary variable. This makes men responsible, not guilty, but responsible. And responsibility is heavier than blame. From manipulation to mastery. Here is where most men misunderstand everything. They hear this truth and think it is about manipulation. It is not. Manipulation requires effort. Effort signals insecurity. What sustains loyalty is not tactics. It is internal command. A man who commands himself commands the environment around him. Not loudly, not aggressively, but inevitably. His tone slows. His movements become economical. His presence carries weight. He does not chase reassurance. He does not explain himself excessively. He does not bargain for emotional stability. And because of that, stability forms around him. The forbidden conclusion was this: female loyalty is not triggered by what you say, promise, or give. It is triggered by who you are when nothing goes your way, when pressure appears, when silence stretches, when uncertainty enters the room. The man who collapses loses loyalty. The man who remains centered deepens it, because the feminine psyche does not attach to performance, it attaches to structure. This is not manipulation. This is mastery of self. Identity transformation, mandatory. At this point, the transformation becomes unavoidable. You are no longer the man who anxiously monitors her reactions. You are the man who sets emotional temperature. You are no longer reactive. You are directive. You no longer ask to be chosen. You become difficult to replace. Not because you demand loyalty, but because your internal world does not fracture under pressure. And loyalty follows strength, the way gravity follows mass. The inevitable truth. The man who begs loses. The man who waits dissolves. The man who explains himself into exhaustion disappears. But the man who stands rooted in himself, who carries direction, emotional command, and internal silence, that man does not fear loyalty, because loyalty orbits him. And if you want to go deeper, not into theory, but into application, if you want to build this internal structure precisely without performance, there is a system, a code, a method of reprogramming how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you respond under pressure, not to manipulate women, but to master your own emotional architecture. Because when you do that, loyalty stops being something you ask for. It becomes something that happens. The path is in the description and the pinned comment. Inevitable truth. Female loyalty does not belong to the man who promises. It belongs to the man who remains solid when promises mean nothing.